Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled you're here. All right, I want you to picture this for a second. You're standing on just a breathtaking piece of land down in Costa Rica. You've got the lush rainforest all around you, the topography is super complex, and you're planning a major development or engineering project. I mean, the urge is incredibly tempting, right? You just want to pull a drone out of your case, throw it up in the air, and start mapping out the terrain. It seems so simple, but before those rotors even start spinning, you are entering a highly monitored airspace. And honestly, a single mistake here could completely stall a multi-million-dollar project. So today, we are mapping out the 2026 DGAC drone regulations in Costa Rica. It's a pretty dense regulatory maze, but by the end of this explainer, you are going to know exactly how to navigate it safely and legally so you can keep your timelines entirely on track. Okay, let's dive right into our agenda. First, we'll look at commercial versus recreational use. 2, DGAC commercial permit requirements. 3, restricted zones and rules. 4, the permit process timeline. And finally 5, 2026 updates and compliance risks.
Kicking things off with Section 1, commercial versus recreational use.
So, the ultimate question every developer, engineer, and really any landowner asks before they start a drone survey project in Costa Rica is simply this: do we actually need special permits to fly? Well, the short, undeniable answer is yes. Absolutely. Costa Rican airspace is tightly regulated by the Dirección General de Aviación Civil, or the DGAC for short, which operates right under the Ministry of Public Works and Transport. You can think of them essentially as the FAA of Costa Rica. They govern the skies, and their aviation rules apply the exact second your drone leaves the ground.
Okay, we really need to debunk this tourist drone myth right out of the gate because, wow, this catches an unbelievable number of foreign investors completely off guard. There is this massive, persistent belief out there that a tourist stamp in your passport magically shields you from local aviation law, allowing you to fly commercial equipment without any prior authorization. It absolutely doesn't. Literally every single year, foreign developers try to bring high-end surveying drones through the San Jose airport only to have them immediately detained. The equipment gets locked up at customs simply because the traveler didn't get prior commercial authorization from the DGAC. Aviation law applies to everyone, no matter what passport you're holding.
The line between being just a hobbyist and a commercial operator, it's razor-thin. Recreational use is strictly limited to hobbyists flying on their own private property with drones that weigh under 25 kilograms. That is it. If there is any business benefit derived from the flight whatsoever, you immediately cross into commercial territory. And that doesn't just mean a direct cash payment for surveying. Actually, even if absolutely no money changes hands, like say trading drone shots for a free hotel stay, or using a quick aerial photo to market a piece of real estate, or even just checking the progress of a construction site for your own firm, boom, you are instantly classified as a commercial operator. And commercial operations require full DGAC authorization. There is just zero gray area here.
Moving right along to Section 2, DGAC commercial permit requirements.
To actually get authorized, you've got to build upon 4 non-negotiable pillars of DGAC compliance. First up, operator certification. The pilot must hold a valid DGAC UAS certification. That proves they have a really deep knowledge of meteorology, airspace structures, and local aviation law. Second, aircraft registration. Every single commercial drone must be thoroughly inspected and registered with the Aviation Authority, bearing its own specific registration number. Third, liability insurance. Operators have to carry robust third-party liability insurance covering any potential property damage or personal injury. And finally, flight plan filing. Before every single commercial operation, a detailed flight plan must be officially filed. Look, this isn't some quick weekend course you just breeze through. This is a rigorous aviation framework designed to keep the national airspace completely safe.
Which brings us to Section 3, restricted zones and rules.
So even if you are a fully licensed operator, you're still bound by some pretty strict altitude limits. 120 meters, or roughly 400 feet, is your absolute ceiling in uncontrolled airspace. But here's the catch when you're flying in Costa Rica. The topography is exceptionally dramatic. You might be mapping out a site and feel incredibly tempted to just send your drone over a dense jungle ridge to see what's on the other side. You can't do it. Aviation law dictates you absolutely must maintain visual line of sight, or VLOS, at all times. You cannot fly blindly behind a mountain or dip down into a valley where you lose direct visual contact with the aircraft, at least not without securing very specific case-by-case authorization.
And that altitude, it drops even further when we talk about proximity to air traffic. 8 kilometers. That is the strict exclusion zone radius enforced around all airports and aerodromes. And here's a pretty surprising fact about Costa Rica. The country is just covered in tiny, hidden domestic airstrips tucked right into the jungle or nestled along little coastal towns. Honestly, you might not even realize one is right down the road from you. If your property falls inside one of these massive, invisible 8-kilometer bubbles, your flight ceiling automatically drops to just 50 meters, and your flight requires direct radio coordination with air traffic control. Bypassing this is absolutely not an option.
Now, beyond the airports, Costa Rica is globally famous for its incredible biodiversity, right? Well, that introduces a dual permit reality. If your survey area involves flying over, or honestly even directly adjacent to, national parks, biological reserves, or wetlands managed by CNAC, aviation permits alone aren't going to cut it. You need a secondary environmental permit from MINE. You have to definitively prove your flight won't harass the local wildlife, like nesting macaws or monkeys in the canopy. If you skip this critical step, the environmental agencies will not look kindly on your project, and your entire environmental impact assessment could literally be dead on arrival.
All right, let's talk logistics in Section 4, the permit process timeline.
Look, when you hire a licensed professional, they make this dense bureaucratic maze virtually invisible to you. Their workflow is streamlined to absorb all that friction. First, the pro assesses the site and files that intricate flight plan we talked about. Next, they handle all the processing and back-and-forth communication with the DGAC. And finally, they legally execute the flight and hand you the precise data you actually need. As a developer or a project manager, you never actually have to interact with the aviation authority directly. The licensed operator shoulders the entire regulatory burden for you.
So how long does that middle processing step actually take in the real world? You absolutely must build this lead time into your project schedules. In standard uncontrolled airspace, you should expect about 10 to 18 business days from the moment the project is confirmed to the day the actual survey flight happens. But if your property is sitting in that 8-kilometer airport zone or situated near a protected wildlife reserve requiring that complex dual permit, you need to budget 3 to 5 full weeks. Planning ahead is quite literally the only way to avoid completely derailing your development timeline. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, 2026 updates and compliance risks.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the DGAC is rapidly modernizing for 2026, actively aligning themselves with international aviation standards. A major upcoming shift is electronic conspicuousy. Going forward, commercial drones will increasingly need to broadcast ADS-B or remote ID signals. Think of this essentially as a digital license plate that allows air traffic controllers to track the drone's exact position in real time to avoid crewed aircraft. We're also seeing the rollout of much stricter documentation standards for flying over dense urban zones, along with a significant review of liability insurance minimums, just to guarantee that projects have totally adequate financial coverage. I really want you to consider this deeply serious fact. Survey data collected without proper DGAC authorization may be inadmissible for permitting, EIA filings, or legal proceedings. Just imagine that for a second. Imagine spending thousands of dollars on a highly precise topographical survey, submitting it to the local municipality or the environmental agencies to get your permits, and having it thrown out completely, just because your pilot wasn't officially licensed. All that time, all that money, completely wasted. And worse, an unauthorized crash could instantly void your multi-million-dollar construction insurance policies, opening you up to catastrophic legal liability.
So I'm going to leave you with this final, crucial question to ponder. Is an unlicensed drone really worth risking your entire project? The regulatory maze in Costa Rica is very real for sure, but it is completely navigable when you rely on professionals who actually hold the proper legal authorizations. Doing it right protects your data, your liability, and your significant investment. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this gives you the exact blueprint you need to keep your projects moving forward smoothly, safely, and legally. See you next time.